What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Player Pool. We're looking at the conference championships this week. We got a couple good games, and we have a situation just like last week where tight ends could play a major role in this week's lineup building process, and I'm going to get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at PumaCom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching Player Pool. Going to be taking a look at the NFL Conference Championships this week. We got a couple great games on this episode. We got the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Washington Commanders with a 47.5-point total in that one. Philadelphia are 6.5-point favorites. And we got Kansas City versus Buffalo. We got a 48.5-point total in that one with 1.5-point spread in favor of the Kansas City Chiefs, who are playing at home this week. So a couple good games to break down. Just like last week, where I talked about how it was going to be National Tight End Week yet again. The tight ends came through for us last week. We had a couple big performances out of the guys that I was projecting to have big games, which worked out well for Showdown, especially with Likely and the captain once again. So if you guys watched last week's show, you know what I'm talking about. But fortunately for us, a lot of those same defenses are still in this week, which is going to set up another situation just like last week where we got some good tight ends versus some bad tight end defenses. So that's going to help us differentiate potentially with our lineups. I'm going to get into that in a second. Before I do that, make sure to hit the like button. I'm looking for 30 likes so we can put out my favorite picks in the comment section later on as we get closer to lock, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm looking for 1,800 subscribers. I need about 80 left to get there. So definitely appreciate your help. I'm trying to get there before the end of the conference championships. Going to have a massive Super Bowl week. Got a lot of guests line up for the Super Bowl week. Going to be breaking down that game with several different experts that week. So it's going to be a good week for Super Bowl. You're not going to want to miss it. So subscribe to my channel. And make sure to subscribe because you want to hit the alert button to get alerts for when my shows and my content gets posted, because they don't get posted at any set time. You need to hit the alerts to know when that stuff is getting uploaded. So, all right, guys, let's go into some analysis here. Going to be building for DraftKings lineups in this conference championship 2-game slate. We got a Millie Maker contest with this 2-game slate, which is interesting because I do think that we can get different with our lineup builds this week, especially with none of the wide receivers really having a outstanding matchups. We got a couple notable matchups for wide receivers, but I do think that for the most part, we can spend down on our wide receivers this week. We got a couple teams, the Chiefs, the Bills, even the Commanders to an extent, that have they don't have condensed offenses. They're spread all around the place with who they're passing the ball to, and that's going to set things up to go cheap with our wide receivers, which is going to set us up to maybe spend up at different spots on our rosters this week. So that's going to be a good situation for us, especially when people are spending down this week on the quarterback position and leaving guys like Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts as the lowest owned guys on the slate as far as quarterback position. So that's going to set things up for us nicely. Before I get into that, I'm going to be doing some Underdog Pick Em as we're doing our player breakdown here. I think that's going to make it more interesting for doing our player breakdown. Then we're going to swap over to the DraftKings template here, and we're going to start building lineups. But while we're breaking down these games, we're going to take a look at some good pick'em picks for you guys to use in your Underdog pick'ems this week. And you're going to want to make a deposit on Underdog. If you're a new depositor, use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, and that's going to get you a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. You're going to want to do that because we do a lot of these pick'em picks, and this week especially, I think there's a lot that stand out that's going to make it very easy for us to at least to cash in on some of these like 9-1 odds. It's going to help us with building a little bit of bankroll for our showdown lineups and for our 2-game slate lineups this week. I do think that this week Pick Em is looking pretty good, and we'll do all sorts of variations. We'll do a high risk one where we can make 80 times our money. We'll do some low risk ones where we can make like 9 or 10 times our money. So you guys have a little bit of opportunity to decide which way you want to go with your risk. So let's get into the injury situation first. I'm going to take a look at Washington versus Philadelphia first. Now, with Washington, I had Meg Shoop on my Showdown show the other day, so you're going to want to check out the channel to take a look at that show. But we broke down. Meg is a big fan of the Washington Commanders. I'm a big fan of the Eagles, so I wanted to get our two analysis in on this showdown that we broke down. And on top of that, Meg has won big Showdown contest in the past. She won the Super Bowl a few years back when it was, I believe, Tampa Bay versus the Chiefs. I think it was. It was what's his face? Gronk was in the captain, so it was a good hit by her in that one. So she's got a lot of good Showdown history, and she came on to break down the game with me the other day. So check that out on the YouTube channel. But she pointed out that Sam Cosmi is out this week. He's one of the studs on the offensive line. She was pointing to that as being a massive situation for us to monitor in this game. Obviously, when one of the team's best offensive linemen goes down, then you want to build your lineups or pick your players accordingly. And so that is a huge situation for Washington. He tore his ACL in last week's game. We're also missing Noah Brown, who's been out from like a better part of like 5 or 6 weeks now. Couple more guys that are questionable, but the major news is Sam Cosmi being out this week. So that's a huge thing for Washington. That's going to make them a little bit more susceptible to Philadelphia's pass rush, which has been a bunch of studs this season. We're talking about Jalen Carter, who has been potential defensive player of the year candidate. I can't remember. I don't know if he was announced when they did the announcements for the candidates there, but we're looking at a pretty fierce pass rush. We're looking at the injury situation. Nakobe Dean is out. That's going to be an improvement for the run game. He was a highly graded run defender on the Eagles, and he's going to be out this week. So keep that in mind with not only the running backs, but as a linebacker, it's going to be important for the Zach Ertz situation too, and give Zach Ertz a little bump there. We got a couple defensive rookie of the year candidates in Cooper DeJean and I think Quinion Mitchell too. So we got the defense has just been on fire, and because of that, we also have a coaching assistant candidate of the year in Vic Fangio, who we've been talking up all year. The defense, once they started to get used to his system, they've just been on fire for the entire year, and we've seen it culminate in the Eagles having probably the best defense in the league, and they're also relatively, apart from Nakobe Dean, they're relatively in pretty good shape heading into the postseason here. So on the other game, if we're looking at Buffalo, we got some concerns with Buffalo this week that are going to impact the Chiefs offense, because Christian Benford is right now questionable. He's got a concussion. He's still in concussion protocol. So you're going to want to keep an eye on that situation, because with no Christian Benford, that's going to open up the passing game big time for the Chiefs. We're already missing Taylor Rapp, has been ruled out in this one. So they're missing a safety already. So that's going to be another huge thing for the Bills passing, or for the Chiefs passing game. They're going to elevate, probably with no Taylor Rapp, we're probably going to elevate Hollywood Brown in that situation. Brown was supposed to be a big part of this offense. Really hasn't seen that much of an impact. But in this game, I expect Hollywood Brown to make a potential impact on this game for sure. So Christian Benford, that's the one that we want to keep an eye on for the remaining injury situation on the Bills. At one point, we were potentially looking at Matt Milano as questionable and Terrell Bernard as questionable as well. Those would have been massive as well. These guys help prevent Mahomes from scrambling. And because they are going to be healthy, when we go over to look at Underdog, we can look at some situation where Patrick Mahomes probably won't get as many rushing yards as some might expect because they've been shutting down Mahomes in the, like his scrambling ability, especially in the last game that they played against the Chiefs. So as far as the Chiefs go, I don't think I looked at them yet. With the Chiefs, we're looking at, most of their injuries are on the offense. We're not really seeing a lot of injuries on the defense. We got Jalen Watson back last week or a couple weeks ago, but the Bills aren't going to be able to target Najee Johnson this week. We're looking at most of the damage is on the offense. Mecole Hardman now on IR. Rashee Rice has been on IR for the majority of the season. Sky Moore is on IR. Some other, lesser names on IR, but you see the damage that was done to the Chiefs offense this year. But as far as the defense is intact. And with the offense, they were able to pick up DeAndre Hopkins. They were able to develop Xavier Worthy. They picked up Kareem Hunt as well. And they also picked up, let's see, who else did they pick up? They picked up Hollywood Brown in the beginning of the season. He didn't get to play up until recently, but he has been, playing well since he got back, at least playing well as far as getting, like a decent percent of the snap share. I believe he was, he's run 60% of the routes or something like that. So Hollywood Brown has been, participating in this offense, even though we haven't seen necessarily the opportunities flowing to him yet. But we should see that soon, maybe in this game, with the secondary of the Bills being banged up and the potential for that to be a higher scoring game. So good things for us to note. Let's go over and look at the Underdog situation so we can go through some of these players. Going to start with the Washington-Philadelphia game. As far as that goes, Jaden Daniels is going to be in a bit of a rougher situation than he normally is with that offensive lineman being out. But I do think that they will be able to still score touchdowns on these Eagles, especially with Nakobe Dean out. But the Eagles have been susceptible to passing touchdowns, and I think that we can probably go higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns for Jaden Daniels if we wanted to add him to our pick 'em. As far as Jalen Hurts goes, with Jalen Hurts' knee being injured, I've been seeing reports that he's going to be playing with a brace, which is not good for his scrambling and his running potential. So I do think that this is going to be a more pass happy game for Hurts than we've seen recently. So if we're looking for potential upside for Hurts, I think 191 passing yards seems low relative to what we're seeing for for Hurts's potential. But I do have a play that I like a little bit better with the Eagles with that Jalen Hurts situation, and that play is going down to Saquon Barkley. Barkley is looking at a prop of 127.5 rushing yards. That's his estimate for this pick 'em. Now, I don't want to go higher on 127.5 rushing yards, but what I would like to do is go higher on 13.5 receiving yards because if Jalen Hurts is not able to scramble, that means he's going to be off a little bit more. And I don't mind going as high as 20 receiving yards for Saquon Barkley this week, to potentially take advantage of the situation with Hurts's knee. And we know that they're going to make Saquon a huge part of this offense as it is. So I do like that 19.5 receiving yards for Saquon Barkley this week. And Saquon obviously has the highest probably floor on the slate as far as the DraftKings situation goes. So Saquon Barkley is definitely a guy that we can keep in our lineups. Other guys that will take advantage of Hurts is being injured and potentially Saquon being slowed down a little bit. I do think Saquon's going to have a decent game, but I do think that if they're leaning more on the passing game, that's obviously going to be good for A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is in a situation against the Commanders where his past several games against the Commanders, he's scored 24 DraftKings points, 12 DraftKings points, 36 DraftKings points, 42 DraftKings points, 1.7 DraftKings points, and then 20 DraftKings points. So all except for 2 games, A.J. Brown, we're looking at higher than 20 DraftKings points against the Commanders. And I would anticipate him to be the focus of this passing game if we see Jalen Hurts struggling at all. And I do believe that he can get higher than this potential 4.5 receptions. Let's take a look at his history against the Commanders to get a better idea. Keeping in mind that obviously the Commanders are being run by a different coaching staff, different defensive scheme and all that. But take a look regardless at his history versus the Washington Commanders. I'm going to go over to Pro Football Reference. If with A.J. Brown, as far as receptions, we're looking at 8 receptions, 5 runs, 8 receptions, 9 receptions, 1 reception, and 5 receptions. 5 receptions. And if we're looking at receptions for his line, I don't mind going high and Hurts, being a little banged up and being a little more pass happy in this one. Another guy that I like for a potential pick 'em pick is going to be Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith has not done as well against the Commanders. Talking about 11 DraftKings points, 7 DraftKings points, 23 DraftKings points, 15, 15, and 34 DraftKings points. So he still had some decent Commanders, but I do think that Devontae could be positioned at least. If we don't like the receiving yards being at 46.5, I don't hate him as a anytime touchdown situation. I was watching a Action Network podcast with Chris Raybon, and Chris Raybon's a guy that I respect when he gives out his props. And one of the guys that he liked was Devontae Smith for an anytime touchdown. I don't know if I'm going to put him on this particular build that we're doing right now for Pick'em, but Devontae Smith is a guy that you can keep on your radar for a potential anytime touchdown at 1.59 times your money. So let's take a look now. We've looked at the quarterbacks. Let's take a look at the running backs on the Washington side. We took a look at Barkley already. If we do that, we're looking first at Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler is a guy who I think is going to have a decent game in this one. When Meg was on my Showdown show the other day, she really liked Eckler as well. And we just believe that with the situation with Washington, rookie quarterback might lean more on his veterans. That's going to be like Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz. With Eckler, I would envision him getting more than I like him going higher than 19.5 rushing yards, but I also like him going higher than 25.5 receiving yards. I think I'm going to go with receiving yards because I believe that they're going to be leaning on him more in the pass game. With that, with missing the offensive linesman, going to have less time to throw. So they're probably going to be doing some dump offs to Austin Eckler, and Austin Eckler has some good yards after the catch potential. So let's put him higher than 25.5 receiving yards. Add another guy to our growing list here. Brian Robinson. I don't mind Brian Robinson this week. I think with Nakobe Dean out, that's another plus in the Eckler matchup as well. But with Nakobe Dean out, I think Brian Robinson is going to have a much easier matchup. I don't mind going higher in 37.5 rushing yards for him. But I prefer to go with the Eckler receiving route because I do think that the Eagles could potentially be playing with a lead here, and it might take the actual run game out of consideration for Washington, depending on how the game flow goes. If Washington's able to convert on some fourth downs and some aggressiveness, then that could flip things for us. If you believe that that's going to happen, maybe go higher for Brian Robinson on his rushing yards. But I do like Eckler with the receiving yards because I think Eckler is going to be pretty game script proof in this matchup because I think he's going to get carries whether or not they're winning this game. So if we're going down further, I mentioned the veteran guys. Zach Ertz is going to be in a good matchup against the Eagles. The Eagles let Tyler Higbee last week score about 18 DraftKings points, but they were vulnerable to the tight end. Ertz has already had a big game against them so far this season already. We'll take a look at what he did earlier this season against them. Ertz against Philly. The second game, he didn't do so well. He only got 2.2 DraftKings points, but that first game, he had 18.7 DraftKings points. Now, Nick Sirianni was talking a bunch of smack to him after that last game, and Nick Sirianni is a goofball. He probably he probably pissed Ertz off enough so that the team is going to take advantage of it and give Ertz some opportunity in this one. I do like Ertz going higher than 32 receiving yards. I also like him going higher than 3.5 receptions. I think that might be the lean that I would have in this one. Let me take a look here. Let's take a look at what Ertz has done this season so far with his receiving. Looking at 5 targets, 4 targets. Let's look at the receptions here. We're looking at 5 receptions, 2 receptions, 5 receptions, 6 receptions. So 4 out of the last 5 games, he's hit that 3.5 receptions. And then if we go further down, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 out of 19 games that they've played, he has hit that 3.5 reception mark. So I think that is the safer play if we want to, just build a string of guys here in our pick 'em. Let's go ahead and put him in there for higher than 3.5 receptions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're looking at 5 guys right now. That's brought us up to 20 times our money. If we want to put that pick 'em in, that's a pick 5. I don't usually like going higher than 5 picks, but for what we're doing on this show, I just want to just keep adding guys onto this list of ours who I like. Dallas Goedert I like as well. I think if I'm going Dallas Goedert, I'm probably going to be looking at his yardage as opposed to receptions. I'm going to go with the 39.5 receiving yards. I'm going to go higher there. We might be able to bump that up a little bit. I don't want to bump it up to 49. Let's keep it as it is. Let's stick with that. for the sake of this one. Trying to find a guy that I would prefer to go lower on too. Oops. Trying to find a guy that I would prefer to go lower on for this pick 'em. Let's see. Terry McLaurin has struggled against the Eagles. It's tough to go lower on Terry McLaurin, but Quinnen Williams is looking like he's going to be in this week. He was questionable in the early part of the week with a shoulder injury. So if I'm looking at Terry McLaurin, we're talking about non-PPR here. And, 11.45 fantasy points is what I would be looking to go lower on, or I would be looking to go lower on 63.5 receiving yards. Let's go ahead and look at Terry McLaurin's history versus the Eagles. This is a little bit effective than looking at the Eagles against the new defense because McLaurin is facing Fangio defense, and the Eagles had roots in Fangio defense for a while now. They hired him to be a consultant the year that they made the Super Bowl, and let's see, that was back the Super Bowl, the recent Super Bowl with Jalen Hurts at quarterback. That was back a couple years ago. But if we're looking at Terry McLaurin, now he's facing a pure Vic Fangio defense. We want to see what he's done versus the Eagles as far as his yardage. 60 yards, 63 yards. He did have 28, and 2. So he had a little streak there where he had 3 in a row where he beat that. But then he went to 61, 51. Those are with much worse quarterbacks, but you get the idea. He struggled to put up yardage with the versus the Eagles. He's able to score touchdowns, but hasn't been very high in the yardage. I think they've been able to kind of slow him down. So if I was going with a McLaurin pick 'em, I think I'd try for the lower on his receiving yards, knowing that Jaden Daniels is probably going to target him a lot. But keep in mind, with the situation with Jaden Daniels missing his offensive lineman, maybe they're looking to target shorter routes. But I do think that McLaurin's been running more routes in the slot too. So it's not a comfortable play, but if you want a lower here, I think Terry McLaurin makes for the best lower on 63.5 receiving yards. All right, so let's take a look now at who I have been missing in this breakdown. Let's go over to DraftKings for the rest of these guys. Devontae Smith, I was talking about. I don't mind him in this matchup. Diami Brown. Last time they played each other, we've seen Diami Brown have a couple big weeks in a row in the playoffs, 19.9 and 15.8 DraftKings points. But the guy they were leaning on before the playoffs was Olamide Zaccheaus. He had hurt his hip at least last week. He was playing with a hurt hip. Didn't know about that, but I was high on Olamide Zaccheaus heading into last week's game. Did not do anything, but you can see the week that he broke out. He scored 2 touchdowns against Philly. He had 8 targets in that game, 5 receptions for 70 yards. Really came out of nowhere in that matchup. It is a revenge game because Zaccheaus was on Philly at one point, but Zaccheaus, for whatever reason, they decided to target him in that last game against Philly, and we have not heard much out of Zaccheaus since then, which is going to set up Zaccheaus to be a sneaky potential play in this one if you want to go back there. Jamison Crowder also had 2 touchdowns in that game versus Philly the last time they played. He had 15.5 DraftKings points. So you can't really rule these guys out either. But the guys I think that are my favorite on the Washington side are going to be Ertz and Eckler. I think those are going to be my favorite guys on the Washington side. On the Eagles side, it's really like Hurts. I pretty much like everybody on the Eagles side. It's hard to discern which guy to leave out, but maybe prefer Brown to have the bigger PPR game, and maybe Devontae Smith for an anytime touchdown. But I do like Goddard too. We've seen Washington super susceptible to tight ends, especially recently. They've been giving up a lot of points to the tight end position. That's the reason we were targeting Sam Laporta last week against them. Sam Laporta came through. But, like I was saying, it's going to be a big week for tight ends. So I like Goddard, and I like Ertz. I like them both in this game. So keep that in mind. Let's move on to the next game. We're going to look at Buffalo versus the Chiefs. So this is going to be another game where we can go over here and check out our pick'em situation. Let's see if we can add to this pick'em over here. We know that we've been targeting the slot position versus Buffalo all season, and that might on like first thought set up Khalil Shakir to have a good game running most of his routes in the slot. But there is another slot guy that I like better as far as taking a higher situation on his pick'em. It's not Khalil Shakir at 5 receptions, 4.5 receptions, and 55.5 receiving yards. I prefer to go down to Curtis Samuel, who also runs out of the slot. He had a big game against Kansas City last time they played, understandably being a slot receiver. Let's go higher on his 1.5 receptions. Let's see where that's taken us. I'm going to take McLaurin out of this one just because we don't really need to go there. I don't want to take the risk on 63.5, which seems like a pretty reasonable line with him. All right, so we're up to 7 on this pick'em. Gonna go to the tight end position next. So I do like Shakir in this game as the obvious play, maybe the DraftKings play. But I think as far as the pick'em, I like that 1.5 receptions for Samuel this week. If we're looking more at the tight end position, which has also been a weakness of the Chiefs, then we can look at Dalton Kincaid for potential going higher than on his situation. But one thing that I like to do with this week's pick'em, if I want to really boost this, right now we're looking at a 34, 34 times our money. Dalton Kincaid, these 3.5 receptions, I just don't trust guys to get volume in this offense because they go all over the place and they spread the ball too thin. I don't like the yardage either because he could get like a few targets and still not hit that 32 yardage. I preferred to go to a anytime touchdown, a touchdown rushing or receiving touchdown, but I don't want to go to Kincaid with it. I want to go to Dawson Knox with it. If we do that, we're gonna take our 8 picks and juice it up to 247 times our money. Sounds ridiculous, but like Dawson Knox is the second leading touchdown receiver in the history of the Bills. He's tied with Gabe Davis, and there's another person that he's tied with, but he's good buddies with Josh Allen. And this is what I like about this game. Dawson Knox has been getting targets. Let's go over here and look at DraftKings real quick. If we're looking at Dawson Knox, last week he had 2 targets versus Denver. The first week of the playoffs, he had 3 targets. Then he had 3 targets, 2 targets, 3 targets, blah, blah, blah. He had 6 targets against Kansas City the last time that they played. He's been targeted pretty frequently. And it goes underlooked because everybody is on Kincaid. You look at Kincaid with his targets. He hasn't gotten very many more than Dawson Knox recently. But if you look back week 16 on, and he was having 7, 7, 5, 10, 7, 6, 7, just had a bunch of targets earlier in the season. But recently he hasn't been getting as many targets. Let's look at Dalton Kincaid. Just I'm not really sure how he's done. I'm going to look at Dawson Knox. Sorry, not Kincaid. against the Chiefs for their history. Gonna look at his career. Let's see what he's done versus the Knox has been one of those guys in the all right, so we got one target the last time they played in the playoffs, only had 4 yards in that game, but he had 4 targets in 2020. We had 8 targets against them in 2020. Obviously, that was before Kincaid. The last game that he played them, he had 6 targets for 4 receptions. And, previous games, we're looking at 3 targets versus them. That was with Kincaid on the team. He had 3 targets against them in 2022, 4 targets against them before. He's had a couple touchdowns, 3 touchdowns total against the Chiefs already, including one of the playoff games that they faced off against the Chiefs. But the Chiefs have been really weak, susceptible against tight ends this year. And I just like Dawson Knox potential with that record, potential to be second all-time touchdown receptions in postseason for the Bills. He's a buddy of Josh Allen's. I like that it takes us up to 247. Like, this could be a complete throwaway. You could put like $5 on something like this. If we put $5 on it, we have a potential to win $1,200. And really, it gives us a good sweat like during the game. And I've gone through all these plays with you guys. I like Dawson Knox higher than 0.5 rushing receiving touchdowns. I like Curtis Samuel higher than 1.5 receptions. I've made a case for that. Made a case for Dallas Goedert higher than 39.5 receiving yards. Made a case for Zach Ertz higher than 3.5 receptions. We have a case for Austin Eckler going higher on his receptions. We have a case for A.J. Brown going higher. There's a lot of hires here. I don't like going this many hires. If you wanted to go lower, you could maybe go lower on Saquon Barkley's rushing yards at 127. That sounds reasonable. I do like going over or higher on the receiving yards for him, though. And I like Jaden Daniels to throw more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. So it's not like unreasonable with these picks that we're doing here. Use the promo code SEEK for a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. Get that money in because we got best ball coming up. You're going to want to get that bonus money so you can play some best ball contests when pretty much they start pretty much after the Super Bowl is over these days. So you want to make sure that you're making your deposit, getting that bonus money so you have money ready to use in the best ball season. Or if you like doing NBA or MLB best ball is coming up here pretty soon. If you like NBA pick 'em, stuff like that. If you like playing these games, Underdog's a good spot to do it. You get protection for your players getting vultured touchdowns, your running backs getting vultured touchdowns. If guys get hurt, before the half, they have protections against that as well. But just a good site to play on. And $5, let's throw it in there and try to make $1,200 from $5 there. So there we go. We got the play there. You can even make $10 yourself by sharing your link. So, all right, guys, let's switch back over to DraftKings mode and let's build these lineups. Other guys that I like, we didn't really go over the running back situation. Cook has been getting a lot of work in the playoffs, a lot more work in the playoffs as far as touches and attempts. 23 and 17 the last couple weeks. Those are pretty much in line with his highest of the season. So they've been using him a decent amount. But we saw that 23 attempts versus Denver. He had 21 DraftKings points against them. Cook has been on fire this year. We've seen a lot of big weeks. Kansas City's been better against the run than they have against the pass. They've been giving up 14.8 DraftKings points a game only to the running back position. So they're not a good matchup for running backs. They've been giving up 15.7 to wideouts. They're not a good matchup for wideouts, especially with Jalen Watson back in. So that is going to take out Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper for me. that's going to shift my focus. Like I was saying, I like the tight ends and I like the slot receivers in this one. I like Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel, Dawson Knox, even Dalton Kincaid. I think I like that Dawson Knox, touchdown if I'm doing pick 'em, and I like him as a cheap flex option as well. But if you're looking for, maybe a little more stability, maybe Kincaid has a little bit more stability than, Dawson Knox does. Now, as far as the Kansas City side, the receivers all have good matchups, slot receivers, and Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown does 41% of his routes from the slot. They both have good matchups, and wideouts also have good matchups. That's another reason why I like Hollywood Brown this week. Kelsey has been on fire in the playoffs, and he also has a good matchup. We targeted Isaiah Likely in part because of the matchup, but also with the Bills missing their safety, that's going to make Kelsey even more interesting this week. And just, Kelsey is just a playoff machine. We see it every year with him. Look at his playoff game last week against Houston. He had 27.7 DraftKings points. He put up 22 the week before, the bye week when he had 22.4 against Pittsburgh. That was actually 2 weeks before the bye week. So Kelsey's going to be a good play this week. Just all sorts of interesting scenarios here with Mahomes. Now, Mahomes could be the under here. Let's go back to this. Let's go back to this pick 'em. Let's take out Ertz out of this, or let's take out Goddard out of this one. Let's go back to Mahomes because I liked him going lower on his running yards. If we go to Mahomes, let's look at his rushing yards. They got him at, let's see, longest rush. Trying to find his rushing yards. He got him at 25.5. I'm going lower on that 25.5 rushing yards. Now, that gives us an even better situation. I'm going to play this one too. I'm going to play this one instead. I played the other one already, but keep this one in mind. Jaden Daniels higher than 1.5 passing touchdowns. Saquon higher than 19.5 receiving yards. A.J. Brown higher than 4.5 receptions. Eckler higher than 25.5 receiving yards. Ertz higher than 3.5 receptions. Samuel higher than 1.5 receptions. Dawson Knox anytime, like a rush receiving touchdown. And Mahomes lower. We got our lower in there, 25.5 rushing yards. That is going to get us $1,300 if it hits for us. So switch back here, find it again. Shut it off before I showed you guys what the new one looked like. All right, so we got Barkley, Knox, Mahomes lower on 25.5 rushing yards. Eckler higher in 25.5 receiving yards. We got Daniels higher in 1.5 passing touchdowns. Ertz higher in 3.5 receptions. Brown higher than 4.5 receptions, and Samuel higher than 1.5 receptions. $5, put it on it. If we win, we hit $1,300. So pretty good situation there. All right, so we've gone over most of these guys. Josh Allen probably going to be running a lot more. He's been running a lot more in these matchups against the Chiefs. He's gone over 10 rushing attempts in every game he's played against the Chiefs pretty much. So if you want to pop him in that underdog pick 'em with higher than 9.5 rushing attempts, I don't mind that at all either. You could even do that over maybe the Zach Ertz 3.5 receptions. I don't mind swapping that out. So Josh Allen should get a decent amount of rushing attempts in this one. He's expensive, and so he's going to be lower owned, which is going to be an advantage for us. Let's go ahead and build these lineups. Going to put Josh Allen in that quarterback spot. I like Barkley. I think Barkley's got the highest floor in this one. We talked up some of these receivers. I do like Hollywood Brown in this one. I was thinking he was going to be a sneaky play for us, but Hollywood Brown is going to be high owned. Just kind of goes to show the state of this slate with the receivers. With the running back situation, I do like Eckler. I was talking about that with Meg on my Showdown show I mentioned earlier. I like the Eagles D. I don't think there's anything sneaky about that. Kelsey, I like Kelsey to be my run back. With Allen, I like to use the slot receiver. I'm going to go with Khalil Shakir. Let's go with Devontae Smith. I talked about how I like him potentially getting a touchdown. Let's get him in there. That's going to leave us with 3,600. If you wanted to, instead of Smith, let's go with A.J. Brown. Now, that leaves us with 2,600 for our flex. And that leaves us right there in that Dawson Knox range. Dawson Knox, I don't mind going 2 tight ends in this one. I think Dawson Knox for a $2,600 guy against this weak Kansas City tight end defense, I don't hate that at all. If you wanted to swap it out from A.J. Brown to let's go back with Smith. Let's put Smith back in there. And that leaves us with 3,600 in the flex. If you want to go with Smith, you can put Kincaid in there. You could put Samuel in there. I talked both those guys up. You got like Mac Hollins, Juju Smith-Schuster, all sorts of options there. I do think that this is going to be a super easy build this week. I think it's like that intentionally because, more people are going to be, discovering DraftKings this week. So, keep that in mind when you're building your lineups. If you want to do a different direction, Jalen Hurts is not going to be popular this week. There's been a lot of people down on Hurts. I was even down on Hurts when I was talking about him on my show with Meg, and then it dawned on me that, wait a minute, everybody's high on Barkley and down on Hurts. That means that Hurts is probably going to have a big week this week. So let's put Hurts in there. Let's put A.J. Brown, and let's stack him with Goddard too, because I do like Goddard's matchup. Let's put Eckler in there because if we're seeing this much going on the Eagles side, then they're likely to be a fast-paced game, and I like Eckler in that situation. Let's get him in there. Let's get some of these guys that I like in the other matchup. I like Shakir versus that defense, and I like Kelsey as well. Let's go ahead and go with the Eagles D. If you want an expensive running back, now if I got Hurts in here, then it's likely that Barkley is not going to be putting up a lot of points. Although I do think that he has a high floor, 8,600 for that floor. When I can pay 6,900 for Cook and get him in there instead, that leaves me with $5K for my remaining wide receiver spot, and that's going to put me in that Hollywood Brown range. And I like doing that. That doesn't leave me with too many Chiefs. It leaves me with a triple stack of Hurts, Brown, and Goddard. Got the Eagles D in there too. We got Austin Eckler. If we wanted to, we could swap out Kelsey, or no, we could let's get Kelsey back in there. If we wanted to swap out for Ertz, That leaves us with 5,200 for our wide receiver. Leaves us in a similar spot. Can't really do too much damage there. Yeah, so I stick with Goddard. But that is a way, like a direction that we could go here with a Hurts lineup. I don't think we're really getting too much differentiation there. I think the guys that I like for the lower owned guys that could hit for us, let's take Shakir out. Let's put Samuel in there. And that's going to bump us up to McLaurin's range. So we can get Terry McLaurin in a lineup like this instead of Shakir, and we still have that exposure to the weak slot defense of Kansas City. So I don't mind going that route too if we want to focus more on the Eagles-Washington game. So that gives us a direction there that we could also go. If you wanted to, well, we don't really need the salary to swap down from the Eagles defense, but it gives a couple directions there that we can go with our lineup builds. If we wanted to take Cook out and go with Barkley with Hurts, let's put Brown back in there. This is the 5,500. Doesn't leave us with a, we got Worthy, who's got that good matchup against the Bills. If we took out Curtis Samuel and put Shakir in there, leaves us with 3,300. Let's take the Eagles defense. Let's go with we got Shakir. Let's get Samuel in there. We got both the slot receivers against Kansas City in this one. We got Kelsey on the Kansas City side. We got Hurts double stacked with Brown and Goddard. We're running it back with Eckler. Let's run it back with McLaurin instead. 2,100 for our defense. We can't do anything there. That's where it gets a little bit tricky. All right, so we do have too many Eagles in this one. Let's go with Ertz instead. Still does not leave us with potential defense that we want. So let's switch this around a little bit. This is a version where if you don't think that necessarily Kelsey's going to have a bigger game, then we want to go pivot to Worthy maybe. And let's get that. Eagles defense. I mean, that puts us in Knox territory again. So we got that cheap escape valve in Dawson Knox this week at 2,600 that I think is going to open things up with us no matter what direction that we want to go with our quarterback position. But like I said at the top, I think it's another tight end week. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes so we can put out my favorite picks in the comments section. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Looking for 1,800 subscribers. So hit that subscribe button. You hit that subscribe button, and I'll put out my give me the 1,750 subscribers, and I'll put out that next showdown show by the end of the day today. And I'll put my comments, my favorite picks in the comment section as well. I just need to hit those subscribers. I'm trying to get there before the Super Bowl. So appreciate the help there. Sign up for an Underdog account using the promo code SEEK, SEEK, and tell me on that pick 'em that we did earlier. You're going to get a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. So you deposit $2,000, you're getting $1,000 free. And they got best ball right around the corner. If you've been playing playoff best ball with me, you probably have some teams alive right now. I was all over the Chiefs, all over the Eagles, nothing special there, but I was all over upsets on the NFC side. And so I have a lot of exposure to Washington. I had a lot of exposure to Tampa Bay and the Rams as well. At least the Rams made it to the second round. Tampa Bay, unfortunately, lost to the Commanders, but that's okay because I had some Commanders in there as well. And let's keep it going. All right, guys, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you later on.